I'm Hayes Hartwig. This is Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Tim Hill from Remax. He was actually a New West alumni as well. So it's just a couple of New West boys in the house today.
Great to share a room with another New Westie.
Right? Actually, I was going to ask you, what did you do before real estate? Like, how'd you end up here?
Not a ton before real estate, actually, because I started selling at 20. So I did some labor work, some construction work, a little bit of welding, some courier stuff, like you name it. Obviously did a lot in a couple of years, but just things while I was going to post-secondary, really. And this has been now my whole adult life.
Yeah, maybe since 20. That's a long ass time, man. Like,
yeah,
damn.
I should have more gray hairs.
Right? Hey. don't knock the gray hair, man. So how did you get into real estate? Like what happened? And he was like, "Oh, I'm going to sell houses now."
You know, it's an interesting question. We'll try to not keep it too long because it can get a little bit deep. But the starting point would be that my dad was always self-employed. So for me, I just saw that growing up, that entrepreneurship. He was running one business to another, and I liked that side of things. Mm-hmm. And what was really my turning point is when I was in post-secondary, my neighbor was also a realtor. And we had one of those over-the-fence casual conversations, and he suggested it, actually. And what I liked about it was the fact that I could be my own boss. Yeah. I could use some of my marketing background and just business skills that I was, still working on developing, but stuff that I caught on from my dad. Yeah. And take that to have a greater plan. So I gave myself a few years to try to figure out if this was the right thing for me. After 3 years, I was liking what I was doing. By year 5, I felt a lot more comfortable in it and was, making sales happen, I guess you could say. So making a living at that point. And now we're 16 years later and we're still here. So it's an interesting path for sure.
What did your pops used to do?
His primary business was painting.
Okay.
So he ran a painting company all my life, but he always came up with different ideas and small businesses. He'd get them started up and then he'd sell them off. So he was always sort of cycling something in the background. Still different than real estate, but just that individual business owner. That's what I really liked about it.
Like the OG side hustle.
Exactly. Yeah. When there was not much internet to promote your goods either, right? You had to really get in the grind and knock on doors and find people that wanted something.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I've seen some realtors that are still door knocking these days.
Yeah. So. I had enough doors slammed in my face to leave that alone now, but hey, props to them.
Right. It's a hard grind, man. So the market has been shifting. What's going on? Like I've been involved in a couple of multiple offers already and stuff this year. Like it seems like we're about to take off again. What are you thinking?
I'd agree. I mean, I certainly wasn't expecting the beginning of the year to be this busy.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, almost everything's been in multiple offers or selling within days, right? I mean, if we went back 3 months ago, you'd make an inquiry on a home that was listed for 2 or 3 weeks, it'd be still available.
Right.
Now on day 3 or 4, I'm wondering, has someone seen it and bought it yet?
Yeah.
So it's interesting and more set day and times for offers again. So there's been a bit more of that where they've been, pushing multiple offers, right, or giving the seller a chance to market it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the rate holds and fixed rates coming down, we've seen buyers coming back, and there's no inventory, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're still stuck in that. Now, you did mention about the rates coming down to the fixed rates, of course.
Correct. Yeah.
The variable or not. Do you think? Are you in that camp that when the variable rate starts to drop, that all hell's going to break loose, like the overnight rate?
With the way the market's reacted to fixed rates coming down alone, I think it's inevitable. Really. Yeah. At this point, Bank of Canada is only going to hold until they drop, unless something catastrophic happens. But there's no sign of them going up any further. Yeah. So the stability, I think, is already increasing what's happening in the market. As soon as those rates start dropping and become more competitive again with fixed rates, I think you're going to see a lot more buyers coming back. And the frenzy will be here.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. And so, I mean, essentially, if you haven't gotten in the market yet, maybe do it sooner than later. I mean, that's typical realtor stuff though, right?
Yeah. No hard sell, no hard sell. But I mean, I think something that's becoming more and more prevalent is just that saying about time in the market, not timing the market.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
If you're not buying to sell in a year, which you shouldn't be anyways in any market type,
No.
If you get in, you're getting better rates now than you were, 6 months ago. Prices have not seen significant increases yet, so you're getting at a similar rate for price point. Yeah. And if you're going to hold that home for 5 or 7 years, I mean, you do need somewhere to live at the end of the day too, right? So
it's a lot of those people, I think, that they watch too much HGTV, man, and they're just like, dude, we don't live in a desert, man.
Yeah, well, exactly. If only life was as easy as the TV made it. I mean, then what would we be doing after this? Going for happy hour and not, we'd sell real estate at the lunch table.
Oh, right? Exactly. Not to mention, like, it drives me nuts with you have your buyers come out and they're like, oh, we're just going to renovate the kitchen. It's like, that is not a commercial break, man. That's a week worth
15 minutes.
All hell breaking loose, no kitchen. Like, this is not super easy, guys.
No, or like Love It or List It, one of those shows, right?
Yeah,
same idea.
exactly.
It's like, certainly makes it look a lot easier than reality.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially like, got the buyers that like, I collect butterflies and my budget is like 2.1 million. I'm like, what?
Seriously,
what kind of butterflies are those? Jeez. But it's funny that you say now with the because there is obviously a frenzy going on now. A lot of people decide, instead of dealing with multiple offers and all that madness, to go into pre-sales. Do you think that's a good idea to like avoid that, since a pre-sale, like, this is the price, that's it, there's no competition? Do you think that's a good idea when the market is in that frenzy, or stick with pre-owned, I guess would be the best?
I think it is so situational, but you like based on the client, but you sort of nail the so you hit the nail on the head there when you're saying you're not competing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't in a position where you need something now, right? Maybe you're a first-time buyer living at home. You're still saving. You're working your way up in your career world, perhaps, right? As you've finished your post-secondary and such. And a few years from now, you might be in a better position. Great, you can buy at today's prices, right? And you can close at tomorrow's rates and tomorrow's income. But I think it does depend on what your goals are as well.
Mm-hmm.
Avoiding multiple offers, great way to get in there. And if you take some townhome pre-sales might be finished in the next 6 to 9 months, so you're not really waiting that much longer. You might wait 2 or 3 months to move into a resale home anyways.
Yeah.
Right? It's just those longer 3, 4, 5 year concrete construction high-rise builds that might vary there. But yeah, I think it's certainly an outlet that should always be looked at.
For sure. Now one of the problems though with a lot of the first-time buyers is because real estate's expensive in Vancouver, man. So most of these pre-sale sites want like 20% down. I mean, we're starting to push into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, do they ever flex on that, do you think? Like, because you worked at a pre-sale site in New West. I worked at one in Bohème, in Vancouver. Like, do they ever flex on that? Can you negotiate in a pre-sale?
I've seen it happen with the CMHC letter. I've seen a first-time buyer get a 5% deposit.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
I've also seen it where, as they've sold enough to get past their bonds for construction, that they're a lot more open to everything. They're more open to discounts, upgrades, lower deposits, because they've met their quota. They can start building.
Yeah.
Right? So now they can be more flexible. So again, it just depends on the project, but also the worst you hear is no.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you to ask, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then at least the client's happy too. You know that you've expelled all your options, and then if you can get them that sweet deal, even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe like help our listeners understand, you're talking about getting their quotas and stuff like that. What do you mean by that as far as getting into the pre-sale?
Yeah, we'll use a round figure. Let's say there was a 100-unit construction of whichever type, doesn't matter, townhome, high-rise, etc. The builder will have a construction loan that's contingent on them selling X number of units.
Yeah.
So maybe it's 30, 40, 50. We don't always know as a public person, but they have an amount that they need to sell before they can actually get that construction loan initiated. Okay. So now their lender, whoever it may be, we'll start fronting them their first amount for construction so they can follow through for their development permit with the city and they can actually get the building going and try to stay on schedule, although they are very, very rarely on schedule.
Right,
But
always late.
once a builder's met that, sometimes you'll even see some of them will take some of their product off the market. They might slow their sales pitches because they're not as concerned about selling out immediately. I mean, what developer doesn't want to sell 100 units in one day? But that's not realistic in every market type either. So if they meet their quota and they can start building, at least they know now that they can move forward with the project. There's no more outs, right?
Yeah. So as far as, I guess, if you're trying to negotiate with them for a lower deposit on that, probably come in later, right? So
exactly.
You'll trade off not getting the pick of the lot, but you may be able to make it more affordable to get in there.
Yeah,
right?
I'd agree. I mean, day one of any sales center, they're all hot and excited, right? So they're going to want everything from you, right?
Yeah.
and they're going to do their best to get it. And it's not until they hit a slump or they're slowing down their sales sort of thing that you're going to see some better opportunity.
Yeah. Now, and speaking of that, like, you'll see a lot of people who come into the sales site on their own. And do you think that it makes sense? I mean, obviously, I'm slightly biased, as are you, that you should probably bring a realtor, right? But do you see any problems with going at it on your own at the sales site?
I mean, I see only problems by doing that. At the end of the day, the sales team works for the developer.
Yeah.
It's not that the developer is your enemy by any means, but they do work for them. They don't have your best interest at heart. So just simply from a fiduciary duty as a realtor helping you, we have to have your best interest at heart. But of course, Hayes and I would do that because that's the kind of people we are, on top of just what the contracts say. Furthermore, I try to tell every client, at the end of the day, even if there is no discount, there is no upside from a monetary side of things, and you're paying the same price, you get advice for free.
Yeah.
So we can review the disclosure statement for you, tell you, are there any pitfalls in there? Does it look good for you? Is the estimated completion date realistic? Is it what they told you when you walked in? What's actually included in the home, right? And most of these show homes, they've got lots of designer upgrade items. So you walk in, it looks really pretty and fabulous, but do you get that dining room light fixture? Probably not.
Yeah.
In some cases, the stone for the countertops might be an arborite, not a stone, and maybe that's an upgrade. Again, just things that can be overlooked. So at the end of the day, yes, I mean, of course, we're getting remunerated for bringing you to that sales center by the developer. If you're paying the same amount to them and you get free advice, I just think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's actually funny that you mentioned any of the pitfalls. What are some of the more common pitfalls that people can run into that they may not notice, to the layman kind of thing, that they may just pass by?
Yeah. The first thing I always look at is what the outside closing date is. Okay. So what's the date where a developer, if they don't finish by, can actually wash their hands of things? So basically, you can still stay on board if it goes longer, but you can also take your deposit and move on. Yeah. Now, if the market accelerated so much across those years, there is always a possibility that a developer drags their feet on purpose to see if some buyers will walk away so they can resell them for more. I mean, that's not very kosher, of course. And I'm not saying that they're aiming to do that, because at the end of the day, I'm sure they want to get their money out of it as well, and they want to close it and move on to the next project. But the outside completion date is one of the big ones that I think a lot of the public isn't even aware of what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's when they will theoretically have the latest that they'll have the building done.
Exactly. And if they surpass that date, then you can walk away, and so can they.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something.
A little scary, right?
Yeah,
in ways.
Right.
And sometimes there's other things in there. A lot of it is date related, where they can extend. So they give you a range of where they think they're going to finish, and a lot of times they'll say that they can extend it for 3 or 4 times at 120 or 180 days, right? So you're looking at 4 to 6 months more times 3 or 4 times. And what I think that's important again is if you were banking on being moved in say 2026, but it could be as late as 2028, does that still work for you? Right? Because there is no guaranteed date that you're getting the keys. Whereas on resale, it's negotiated in the contract purchase and sale. Yeah. If it says March 15th, you're getting the keys March 15th.
Yeah. There's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah, exactly. There's just no changing that, right? But on new developments, it is just totally an estimate.
Yeah. So for the pre-sale, since you're representing your client when you go in there, what are some tricks to get the most out of that pre-sale? So, is that parking for storage, or is there any add-ons that you can kind of try to not squeeze the developer for, but like to get the most bang for your buck out of it?
Well, first thing that I thought of when you said parking is in some developments they'll have certain stalls that have EV ability.
Mm-hmm.
Now, perhaps that's something if we're in early enough that we can negotiate that they put your stall where there's an EV outlet or EV ability.
Yeah.
And that's a huge value add in today's world.
Oh,
Although
absolutely.
now, we're talking about hydrogen cars as well coming up, so don't ask me what's next when it comes to that side of things. But an EV charger is certainly a big thing that we see a lot right now. If you can negotiate a storage locker or a bike locker in there. Some markets I've seen where they weren't including laundry, and that was an upgrade.
Really?
Yeah, it's been a few years since I've seen that, but say we'll call it a $2,500 upgrade if we could get you that as an addition too, versus you buying one, even if you bought it on Boxing Day or Black Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to get it delivered, brought in. Hope it doesn't ding your brand new walls, right? So you're better off to just let the developer put it in.
Yeah, it's funny actually you mentioned about laundry. Lately, what I've noticed, because we're getting a lot of the new builds are completing and we're getting them for the rental side of things, that I've noticed that a lot of them have ventless dryers. This is like a trend going on. What are your thoughts on, like, do these things dry? Or are people just going to have damp clothes all the time?
So sometimes new technology like that just worries me.
Yeah.
It's not tried and tested, right? I believe they use it a lot in Europe.
Yeah.
But I'd way rather have a ducting system and just, a blower fan and push that moisture out personally.
Yeah, I'm the same boat.
Maybe I'm just not ready for it. But what I have heard, and I haven't used them myself, but I've heard it takes a lot longer. So they're not nearly as efficient. They're space saving, but they're not as efficient. So
yeah, because I just noticed the trend, and I'd been talking with a couple of the development sites and stuff, and they said like, yeah, this is sort of like the way of the future type of thing. And I'm going like,
interesting.
I don't know if I want that, man.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to stay in the past, I guess. Yeah. Right? So. Yeah, I just don't know what your thoughts are. Then, if you've seen this, like another one, for instance, that the new one that did out in Klahani.
Oh yeah,
they're all ventless, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. It also poses some problems as far as the rental side of it, because now I have to explain to every tenant coming in that this is a ventless dryer,
how to use it, yeah,
right? How to use it, and then you were also dealing with like there's a big bucket of water, so like I'm sure. I mean, those ones were self-managed, but I'm sure they're going to end up with getting calls from tenants like, hey, man, my dryer isn't drying anymore. Like, oh, you got to pull out this bucket thing and empty it and all this stuff, right? So
it sounds like a portable humidifier air conditioning where they've got the water reservoirs. And if you don't empty them and if you don't know what you're doing, you might think it's broken, but really it's just regular maintenance that you might not be aware of.
Absolutely.
So interesting.
I'm also concerned. I mean, I don't know much about the ventless dryers and that, but like, do they overflow? Because sometimes with the air conditioners, we've come into places that are water damaged because they went out for the weekend, forgot about it, and it's been spewing water onto the floor for 72 hours, right?
So we all know water's the enemy.
Oh, yeah. Water is... I am more scared of water in a place than fire in a place, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's a family. So that means we're talking about the pre-sales. Do you know of any that are good? Like, I mean, I'm sure they all have their pluses and minuses, but any like sort of hot take, I'd poke around here or anything that sticks out for you?
I mean, interesting. I know that the Fraser Mills development that launched recently, they were really successful in selling out their first tower.
Yeah.
There's a lot of demand there.
Fast,
we didn't place anyone into it, but I know that's something that I think there's a lot of eyes on, and they got a lot more buildings coming up. So that's one to watch for sure.
Yeah, isn't there like 16 or something? Like, there's a lot of places going. I was like, when I saw the plan, I was like, holy hell, like, this is like a new city.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole master planned community, right?
Yeah.
So it's great to get in on the early stages of that too, because there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, more people moving into that neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So it's sort of like first entry. If there was a hidden gem, being in the first building is your way to get in.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Because I guess all the other buildings would get more expensive because there's already stuff there, right?
Exactly.
So I guess that's a good tip for anyone thinking to get into pre-sales is to get in early, get in first.
I agree. I mean, we've seen a lot of clients buying investment properties in Central Surrey.
Really?
The numbers make sense right now, whereas it's always hard to make the numbers work in Greater Vancouver.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But there's really good rent demand. You've got rapid transit, of course, and values are still reasonable, right? I know that's a hard word to use in anything real estate related here, but they're more reasonable than some other areas, right?
Yeah, I don't think a reasonable price in real estate. You would have just triggered a bunch of our listeners.
Yeah.
So if you're going to send the hate mail, it's Tim at But yeah, you're saying about the Central City there. The rental pool out there is massive because both SFU and UBC have campuses out there. So there's just tons of students. So there's always somebody trying to find some rental there because each semester, there's more students coming, leaving, coming, going. So yeah, I agree. Central City, as far as a rental investment, is a good one. Bias aside, of course, New West is a good one because you get Douglas College fans. Like, oh man, 3 SkyTrains, 5 actually, but 3 on the same line. But anyways, like downtown New West, massive rental pool. Yeah, it's never hard to rent a place,
and accessibility to Vancouver if you hop on the SkyTrain.
Exactly,
right? 20-ish minutes and you're downtown. Yeah, right? It's great.
20 to 40, but either way, yeah, like it's a massive rental pool. So yeah, that's a good one to look at. But we just had a couple of pre-sales, but they are bloody expensive. We got that giant one down on the water. Now I'm triggering people in the West, but like those ones they're friggin' expensive.
Yeah, a lot of dough, definitely.
Yeah, well, especially like you're looking at they're building that into the Fraser River, like. That can't be cheap, man.
Yeah, no doubt,
like,
right?
You're stopping a river, dude. Like, holy hell. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, unfortunately, it's going to push up rental prices. Like, New West rental prices have already gone nuts. Like, things we were renting a few years ago for $2,000 are now renting for $3,000.
Yeah, it's
like,
wild.
It's just nuts.
Have a 50% increase like that.
Yeah.
That's
like, it's crazy how much it's gone up. But that actually kind of leads on to, as far as an investment side of things, do you think it's better to buy a pre-sale and sort of put the 20% down in the future for that? Or do you think a turnkey is better to go with and start making your money now? But of course, it's older, you know, it might not be like ancient or anything, but the pre-sale, of course, it's brand new, everything's under warranty, but more expensive. Or the older ones, which aren't under warranty, you can get a little bit cheaper, but things break or Strata needs to replace the roof or whatever, then did you lose all your savings?
I know it, and you know there's pros and cons to both, and I think a bit of it is risk tolerance for the client. If you're a multiple unit investor, buying pre-sales a lot less scary. You probably have a lot more capital saved, you know, more experience in the mortgage world. You're able to not worry as much about closing when that happens in 2, 3, or 4 years.
Yeah.
What I like about the resale side is that you can see exactly what you're buying. So if you don't have that vision and can't look at a 2-dimensional floor plan and know that this works for you know functionality and space and size and dollars and all that kind of stuff, then the positive of the resale is you know what you're buying it for, you know what you're renting it for, you start paying your mortgage right away.
Yeah.
So you sort of, you know, and that's where those goals matter, right? I mean, on the pre-sale side, not to go too much back and forth, but on the pre-sale side, you might have some nice price appreciation across those years too, right? So if you get in at the right time in the right location and you're not paying a premium right off the bat, then there's that advantage where when you're closing on the home, you're already ahead in your equity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely, right? You're building equity as it's getting built.
Exactly.
Essentially, right?
And we know our cash sitting in a bank doesn't make a lot of money, right? So unless you're making true investments to try to generate some income from that money, it's probably better off having it in real estate for the long-term gains.
Yeah. No, and also you had been speaking earlier in the show about how the countertops might be arborite and not granite and stuff like this. Is there a way to protect yourself from those changes? Like do you can you write in these must be granite, or is there anything you can do with that?
Well, so what I meant more so was that in some cases they might have a base countertop type, and then they might show you an upgrade countertop type in the show suite.
Okay.
So making sure that you know what your home is going to look like when you finish.
Yeah.
But there are terms typically in the disclosure statement about like materials. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that we probably see that more in flooring. What if the flooring that they plan to use gets discontinued? They've got to get something of a similar color, similar family, similar quality, right? But you don't have a lot of choice though, because it's likely in that disclosure statement, which is why we need to read that before you officially sign on the dotted line to know what could they swap out. Appliances are another one actually. I actually there was a new development in Burnaby that I had a couple clients close on last year, and for some reason they couldn't get the stoves. And they were sitting in some container somewhere. So they gave us, no joke, a bottom of the line stove, just so they could close, because everyone wanted to get in. It was a mutual thing. Both the clients and the developer wanted to finish on time, and they honored by putting the proper stove in as soon as they arrived. But their hands were tied. They couldn't get them out of the container. I don't know why they were stuck or where they were stuck, or that's the story they gave us anyway. So was it true? I don't know. But, that's as crazy as it sounds, that's what they told us. But yeah, and even in times if they perhaps, I know there was a KitchenAid appliance shortage a few years ago. If they thought they were using KitchenAid, they might have had to call an audible to a different appliance type to finish, right?
Yeah, now you mentioned the disclosure statement. I mean, those disclosure statements they're thick, man. Like, I'm sure no one's reading the whole damn thing.
Just a few hundred pages long, hey?
Yeah, like just the driest shit you can think of. Is there anything in particular? I mean, you said the outside closing dates, I guess about the appliances now, but like, is there any other points that somebody should be making sure to slow down and find in that disclosure statement, so it's not buried on page 87?
I mean, I know as crazy as it sounds that they are so long, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't read them in full. But you're making one of the biggest investments of your life. Yeah, and even if it's 300 pages long, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but you've got 7 days to read it, right? I'm not going to do the quick math on that, but if you read for 20, 30 minutes a night, you'll finish it. And I just look at it that way. I go, you're making such a big decision. If you don't read it, I think it's crazy personally.
Oh, absolutely.
But does everyone read it? I'm sure absolutely not, right? Yeah. I mean, other things that would be key takeaways would be reading about the developer's history. So if you aren't buying from a big investor, big developer that the name's very prominent, you should definitely read. What have they done? What's their past history? How much real estate experience do they really have? Right? What have they built? Maybe you want to even go do a drive by that building at 123 ABC Street. Does it look good?
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, how's that building holding up 5 years later? Just get an idea of the product, right? It's just like cars. You go test drive cars. You can't test drive a home before it's built, but you can do your due diligence. Right? Yeah, so I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about test driving a home. I had a first-time buyer once that wanted me to request of an owner that they could stay there for a night.
That's amazing.
To see what it's like.
That is
I'm
amazing.
Like, could you imagine loaning your house out to a complete stranger? Hell no.
Like a one-day Airbnb?
Yeah. I was like, I'm 100%. I can't ask someone.
Please don't eat my food in my fridge or use my toothbrush.
Yeah,
right. Sleep in my bed as well. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I was like, oh, that's a different one. Like, I've only been at this for 14 years, but like, I hadn't seen that one before. And my mom, even she's been at it for 36. She's like, "You want what now?"
Yeah, I can't say I've had that request come across my desk either. Hey, props for asking.
Right? you got some cojones, kid.
Totally.
Like, holy hell! So, we're also talking about the parking now. North America, we got some big vehicles. Is there a way to verify that your parking stall will fit your giant, Ford 350 type of, you know what I mean? Like, or is it just kind of hope for the best and that you don't get a small spot?
Yeah, that's such a tough one. I mean, I've been able to negotiate guaranteed side by side stalls before when we were getting a second parking stall. I can't say that I've seen it on my desk where we've been guaranteed that it would fit a certain vehicle type.
Yeah,
and even in the early stages, asking if they know what the parkade height is.
Oh yeah,
that's something you just mentioned, that 450, right? So it's like those are big trucks, right?
Man.
So that's a tough one for sure to do, and I think it would also depend on what type of unit you're buying.
Okay.
Right? If you were buying a bigger unit or more expensive unit, so I think a 3-bedroom, or if they have townhomes on a podium built for a high rise perhaps, and you're spending more money than the average person, you might have a bit more of an upper hand.
Yeah.
Because even if it's not written anywhere, I mean, I feel pretty confident that most developers would assign the small car spots, unfortunately, to the smaller homes.
Yeah,
right, or the lower priced homes a lot of times, and sometimes it's a total raffle. Like in some cases, they label them stalls 1 to 200, and they do it based off your strata lot. So if you're strata lot 1, you get parking stall 1. Strata lot 2, parking stall 2. That's a great way to do it. So there's no bias, of course, right? It's just they're not always done that way. And it would be easier for us when we go to resell them to know, hey, your strata lot 17, park and sell 17, storage locker 17.
Oh, that'd
right?
be glorious.
I know, like it would make life too easy, I guess, though.
That's a good idea. So developers, pay attention.
Yes, noted, right? Please.
Obviously, they're all listening to our podcast because, I mean, we're kind of a big deal now.
They have to.
Right? Is there anything else that people should take into account for pre-sale? Like that at the top of your head to sort of...
I think of exposure right away. So what are you facing? Right?
Oh, like a busy street or
yeah, exactly. Or like, does that building offer views on one side and the other side you're facing another concrete high rise, right? Because on the resale market, that's going to make a big difference. And I think with exposure comes floor level too. So is there a certain floor that you get above the buildings around you and you get more of an open view, or even just more natural light? Yeah, right. I mean, I think most of us, we don't want to live in a dark dungeon looking condo, right? No. So if you can get some natural light coming through, I think that's a benefit right there in itself.
Yeah. So more, I guess, paying attention to the exterior elements, not the interior.
Yes. What are your surroundings and what could happen in there, right? So reviewing the official community plan for the city. Is there going to be 3 more high rises surrounding you? Because right now they don't exist and you didn't think to look at that. And that's another reason where I think getting a good realtor involved helps. Yeah. Because we can help you with that. We can remind you of those things, and you're not just walking into the fancy schmancy presentation center getting wowed by the nice appliances and fancy finishes and furniture that don't come with the home. Yeah. Only to find out that you got bare white walls and none of that furniture when you get the keys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about reselling the home later on. Now, most pre-sales have clauses for assignment. You know, they want X amount and stuff like that. Can you negotiate with that? Like, I notice a lot of the time in the pre-sales, they say that you can't sell it until the building's sold out, but the developer always holds, 3 or 4 floors in case the market, or when the market goes up every 4 years or whatever, as you mentioned earlier. So they're never actually sold out. So can you get around that? Is there any ways to protect yourself so that you can assign that place later on?
I mean, same thing that we've hit on a little bit before, is that if you don't ask, you don't know. And I think asking for that right or ability, where most of the time you can assign to an immediate family member, like one generation up or down, typically, right? Again, so I got to read the contracts though, because that's a total generalized statement. But being able to assign to a third party, it is a contract, right? So you could request to change the assignment fee to 0 and see if the developer bites at it, right? The one, and I say this sarcastically as my favorite way that it says for assignments in some contracts, is at the developer's discretion. Yeah. Now that one drives me nuts. Is it about what mood they're in that day? Do they have a competing unit that they want to sell? That's the big one I'd say to be really careful for, because it's at their discretion. They can say yay or nay if they want to. And that scares me. Right. So if it says something like 90% sold out, like to your point, and they've held back some units, that's also a little bit scary. Right. Yeah. So if you can get something in writing from them, the ability to assign the home prior to closing, and just having more clarity, right? Instead of having this ambiguous written term in the contract, having some clarity. And heck, if it's that there is no assignments whatsoever for anybody, doesn't matter who you are, then that's fine too, as long as you know. Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to make sure that you can qualify when closing is going to come as well.
Yeah, and to speak into using a realtor for purchasing a pre-sale, a lot of people are in the camp that it will save them money to not bring a realtor. Do you think there's any truth to that? Or that? I mean, because like we've both worked on both sides of that table, working for the developer and buying in a development. Have you seen that in yours, that there's any savings? Like at Bohem, there really wasn't. No. The realtor's getting paid, they get paid.
I've never seen someone get a better deal without a realtor on a pre-sale. And market-centric, right? If there's a promotion going on there, you're getting that promotion with or without the realtor coming. So if it says $10,000 off for this week only, you're still getting it. And I think you're right there. The reality is that either the fee that they'd be paying the buyer's realtor is going in the developer's pocket, or it's going in your realtor for allowing them to help you with that home. Right. But I've never seen someone get a better deal. And more often than not, I hate saying it, but the clients that have made that jump or been convinced that they didn't need to call me because they were there on a Saturday, and maybe the rep said, your realtor might be busy, don't worry about it, let's do the contract now, sort of thing. They usually run into more problems, or maybe there was something that was in that contract that they weren't explained, and they didn't catch onto it until it was too late.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a no-brainer to get that assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as that quote goes, just because you can throw a punch doesn't mean you can box.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's funny with the you're talking about the promotions and that. One of the ones that we had when I was working at that sales site is they were giving away a Fiat.
Oh, no way.
My place would give you a car. It's like, that's a really strange promotion, man.
No kidding, right?
It's like, all right. Yeah, hopefully they come with parking, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Small car spot with one of those, possibly.
Right? Absolutely. And then we were talking about assignments. Now, a lot of people purchase in a pre-sale with the intent of the market going up, further down the road. They built that equity like you were talking about, and then reselling it. Are there any tips that you can think of that would help somebody resell it, or I guess also re-rent it as well? Because they all look the same. If you bought in this brand new building, everyone's on the same page. It's all the same age. Everyone's getting the keys at the same time. How do you differentiate yourself? How would you go about making sure that your pre-sale sells before next door that is the exact same?
The toughest part about that battle is it usually comes down to price.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so what's the motivation? Now, if there's been enough equity built, it's not nearly as big of a deal. Let's say on a good day, right, if maybe there was $100,000 upside there, and the same floor plan is selling, like you're saying, maybe one's a dark, one's a light color scheme, but beyond that, there might be zero differences besides the floor level, which there's an easier value to trigger. So then perhaps it's, which one of those assignors want to sell for 90 above instead of 100 above what they paid, right? So I'm not getting greedy would probably be the first thing I think about with that. And I think if you bought the right unit, so if you've bought a good floor level, a good exposure, and you can get that marketing out there, then you'll do all right. But I do think it's really important to always have that intent to close just in case you get trapped. Right?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, they try to get too slick, man. We're seeing that right now. Like the rates all went up. People were not expecting it to be as high as it is now, man. And I think that some people are getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
Like absolutely, right? Absolutely. Just you can't, bank on luck.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to be prepared.
That's not a good business model.
No,
luck is not a business
luck or
model.
hope. Those are not good.
Actually, with the reselling, in your opinion, do you think that it makes much of a difference to stage or not stage? Like some people want it to be empty, but staging can be pretty damn expensive. So like, do you think that do you get your bang for your buck by staging?
That's the controversial one because I know everyone's on opposite sides at times with it. Personally, I think it's all about the first impression, which starts online. And so we've been utilizing virtual staging a lot more in the last couple of years with our vacant homes because they are so darn good that you almost can't even tell. And most people can't tell. We've seen enough listing photos in our day that we will probably pick up on it. But there's times if you're flipping through them quickly, you're not. So you can have the furniture fit the space just like if it was existing staging furniture.
Yeah.
And so to me, if you're able to get that best first impression, get that contact so that buyer's reaching out to their realtor, the realtor's reaching out to us to book the showing.
Yeah.
Now you've got them through. And then they can envision the space too. It's just not everyone's as creative, right? Not everyone can see how their couch would fit. And I get that. But, just like a resale home, if the furniture doesn't fit the property, right? We're not usually moving that out, right? But I think virtual staging is a great way to get that effect without you saying. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars on the staging side.
Yeah,
right?
and you're moving couches and stuff.
Exactly.
It's a tough go in that. Especially, I do think personally for the staging, in my own opinion, is that it's really helpful for when you get some of these new builds that are weird shaped rooms.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Because sometimes you get these weird parallelogram looking room and you're like, where does my couch go? I don't know where your couch goes because this room is really strangely shaped.
Totally.
Or has a pillar in the middle of it or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think for ones that are not just a box,
like a cookie cutter,
you know what I mean? So I think that staging is beneficial when it's a weird situation where if I walk into a room and be like, I don't know how I would set this room up.
Yeah, like where do you start? Right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, do you face, which way do you face your couch? Kind of thing, right? So I do see the plus and minus, I guess, with the staging. But yeah, it's a controversial one. And so many people think that it's like the thing, and some people think that's a complete waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. And then as far as selling in general, for people who are trying to sell quickly, obviously the price is a thing, but what are some other just quick tips to help somebody get the job done quickly and efficiently for the most bang? I mean, which is ultimately what most people want. But like, what would you just say your top 3 things are to make sure that you get the top dollar for your place?
So for clients, decluttering is the very first thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got too much stuff, you're going to make the space feel smaller.
Yeah.
Right. And I think tying into decluttering, try to remind clients that if you are moving, you're
Mm-hmm.
packing. Let's pack some stuff now. Let's tuck it away because you're going to be packing anyways, right? So whether you do it today or you do it in a month from now, you're still packing. So let's sort of clear that out. Removing too many personal things. So typically like family photos, right? Some buyers will look at that and they might not be able to imagine themselves there for varying reasons, right? It's just like some buyers can't imagine where their couch could go, like Hayes said, right? But some buyers, they might see that the people that live there are different than them by some sort, and they can't feel comfortable in that home. So you're sort of eliminating that now. And then a real good deep clean. Truly. We like all of those things. We live in our homes different than we sell them, right? You might have your wedding photos up. I mean, I sure do in my house, but if we put it on the market, they'd be coming down.
Yeah.
Right. We love them while we live in there, but we don't need them when we sell. And I think that deep clean goes really, really well too, because now you're putting a really good impression to those buyers out there. Yeah. They're walking through something that looks like a gem. Right. And if they go walk through something else that, even if the flooring's dirty, say that when we get snow randomly, right, and you got salt on your entry foyer, right? Yeah. And I know those are just little things, but if you get that warm, fuzzy feeling into the potential buyers, they might feel more at home. If they feel more at home, they're going to be more inclined to make you an offer, right? Of course, the home's got to work for them, but you start on the right foot and the rest will fall in place.
It's funny you mentioned about the cleaning, because I have found for both the sales and the rental side, that if it still smells like cleaner, you can see people's facial expressions go, oh, this is the clean. You may have just sprayed like one spray of Febreze at the door, but people are like, oh my gosh, this place is immaculate. It's like, no, this place is still pretty dirty, man. Like they just cleaned the the sand off there, the
little
salt
Febreze.
It's like, oh. Wow, like it's funny that the scent and people they light up, man. So so deep clean, declutter.
Remove your personal stuff, your personal photos, or if you have other things that are just very personal that might not work for everyone, just kind of clear that, like making the home simple, making that you make it appeal to the masses. And if it looks good and it's priced properly, you're gonna sell.
Absolutely. I mean, and hire Tim. Obviously,
that'll work too. Yeah,
that'll always work, right?
There's no magic wand, but we'll do our best.
Wicked, man. Well, I think we got through most of the information on the pre-sales that we were thinking about and how to resell there. If someone's trying to get a hold of you to hire you to get the most bang for your buck, where do they find you, man?
Well, just about anywhere. You can call me on my cell, my email. Find me on social media. Instagram's Tim Hill Real Estate. I can drop the rest of the information, or you can pop it in.
It'll be in the description.
Info, so we're everywhere. We're happy to help. Happy to chat real estate anytime.
Wicked, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you everybody if you've listened this far. We really appreciate it. So be sure to like and subscribe. This has been Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.